Loki, you're in a lot of trouble. What do you want from me? Come on, sit down. Our timeline is in chaos. And you need the god of mischief to help.
Loki is unpredictable.
I know what I am. Good. Bad. Bit of both. Here we are, behind the scenes, with Loki.
Loki.
Here he is. That's me.
It's this really big story with a mixture of tones and genres.
Loki's the god of mischief. We have to do mischievous things. We're creating real mayhem. Bye.
The TVA oversee the sacred timeline and keeps order.
What if you take a character who represents chaos and you put him in that world? You can trust me. Loki have literally stabbed people in the back like 50 times. Why never do it again? This is something I don't think Marvel has ever done. It is very different. The audience will be really excited. This is the good part.
I love the action. There's interesting characters.
There's twists and turns. It's awe-inspiring. What could possibly go wrong? What did you expect?
Welcome back, everyone. This is going to be my brand new Marvel Loki trailer video. They just dropped a whole bunch of new footage, and there's a whole bunch of new details about the series that we learned about and how it's connected to the other Marvel Phase 4 movies like Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness, and everything else. So if you're brand new to the channel, I'll be doing videos for all the episodes starting next week. That's right, episodes help set up the other big Marvel Phase 4 movies with all this time travel craziness going on. But I love how in this new footage, you see Loki trying to take a shot at Mobius the same way he tried to sneak up on Coulson during the first Avengers movie when he's getting ready to show him the recap of all the Marvel movies. That's kind of what's happening here. Like he's screening his life for him, all the terrible stuff that he's done. So it's kind of like doing a big rewatch of the Marvel movies. In Mobius just uses some of their time travel technology to casually reverse Loki back to the point where he was a few seconds ago, falling flat on his ass. Like how about you pull up a chair as he just falls flat on the ground? It's a good example of how advanced the TVA's technology is and how easily they're able to manipulate the timeline. But I love how Owen Wilson's Mobius character here just barely bats an eyelash like it's no big deal when Loki lunges at him. Then you see him talk about the chaos of the broken timeline as they intercut with what seems like female Loki, Lady Loki taking out these other TVA soldiers. They're technically called hunters, like the ones in all the armor with those batons, because they hunt down people that break their laws or people that are variants and that exist when they're not supposed to exist. Then you see them on this very broken looking landscape with a purple sky. It's not clear if this is an alternate version of Earth in some post-apocalyptic timeline. I believe it's meant to be a version of Earth. Like most of the series is them jumping around to alternate versions of Earth, but we do see them in Asgard, so there are a couple different places that they go. It's not completely set on Earth. But I think the idea in this timeline is that the Earth has been strip mined over a long period of time, so maybe this is like an alternate post-apocalyptic Earth that they just turned into a glorified mining colony for Asgard, where you see all these mining camps and the shots being fired all over the place as our version of Loki in his TVA uniform is running around trying to dodge this. And you keep seeing what seems like a version of Earth's moon broken in pieces as a result maybe of overmining or war or something terribly happening in this alternate timeline. It's also the same looking landscape when you see Loki sitting down with Lady Loki, the shot that everybody keeps mistaking for Black Widow. There'll be some Lady Loki scenes in the first couple of episodes, but I expect it to be a very Agatha Harkness type of reveal where it took us a couple episodes of WandaVision to really find out or get some clues about what was going on with Agatha Harkness. But the showrunner did talk about what's going on with some of these alternate versions of Loki in the way they're using them in the story to develop this main version of Loki. Or technically he's the alternate version, but he's the new main version in the MCU. You see him get his ass kicked by this hunter here that we've seen in all the other trailers. She's one of the main characters too. She even got her own poster. She's not a comic book character specifically, just based on the other agents of the Time Variance Authority from the comics, from the Fantastic Four comics, from the Thor comics. Even though you don't think of Thor as being a big time travel character, the TVA did debut inside the Thor comics. Then the tagline of I know what I am, bad, good, a little of both, which is a very apt description for Loki. But he's also suited up in one of these futuristic looking suits of armor, like a Loki designed suit of armor, that it seems like he's taken off of these other troops that he just took out. Like if we're talking about him going after alternate Lokis in these timelines, Whichever alternate Loki they're going after in this particular timeline has amassed his own personal army, and they just look like this. They wear armor that looks like this. No idea which alternate version of Loki this would wind up being. But because it seems like this is in a far distant version of the future, like it's taken this long to strip mine this planet if it's going to be Earth, maybe this winds up being the reality that the older version of Loki comes from. There was a rumor that Richard E. Grant was going to be playing older Loki, but they'd be doing it as more of an homage to the classic version of Loki from the old school Thor comics. Then there's that big behind-the-scenes clip with a bunch of new footage and scenes from the other episodes, particularly this futuristic-looking Blade Runner-style town that we've got a glimpse of in some of the other trailers. No idea what this is actually supposed to be, but it does look a lot like that same type of production design that we saw on Contraxia, the Vegas-like pleasure town where the Ravagers were hanging out during Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And I love this scene of what seems like him summoning a Roomba, the way that Thor summons his hammer, like they're in this Roxanne version of Walmart that we've seen in the other trailers. And there's all those jokes in the other Thor movies about Loki not being worthy, not being able to summon Thor's hammer, like in the first Thor movie when he just sets the hammer on top of him to prevent him from getting anywhere. Only this time, it's him summoning a common household item. There was that deleted scene of Loki summoning Thor's hammer, which was just meant to be an illusion that he was creating for himself to satisfy his own fantasy. Like, what would it be like if I were worthy? Because he so desperately wants the approval of Odin. He wants Odin to think that he is worthy. They kind of pay that off during Thor Ragnarok, like that last conversation that they have, where he acknowledges him as his son. And then during Avengers Infinity War, they paid it off again, where he called himself an Odin's son. But during the big interview that the Loki showrunner did about the series, about how it interacts and crosses over with the other future Marvel movies, they talked about Kid Loki. Even though we haven't seen him in any of these trailers, the series is supposed to feature a version of Kid Loki. Because he is a big Young Avengers crossover character, I know a lot of people are wondering if they're going to include him in future MCU Young Avengers stories. It does seem like they're building a Young Avengers squad across all these Marvel Phase 4 Disney Plus series. I'll talk more about that when we see Kid Loki showing up in episodes, just depending on what actually happens in that particular episode. But the way they actually talk about the Kid Loki character goes hand in hand with the way they talk about all the alternate Lokis. So the showrunner said that the actual story of Kid Loki in the comics, which was from Journey into Mystery, is actually a good metaphor for this main version of Loki. So in that particular Kid Loki story they're referencing, he's actually sort of taken over by the life force of an older adult Loki. So he's very literally and metaphorically burdened with the past sins of a worse version of Loki that everyone hated in the Marvel Universe. But he's a little kid, he hasn't done anything that bad yet, but he's burdened with all these sins. And that's kind of where this version of Loki, the new main Loki in the Loki series, picks up. They're judging him with the full weight of everything that every version of Loki has done or will do, because they can see the whole timeline and they can see all these branch timelines. So it's like saying, even though you didn't commit all these crimes, you're responsible for them. And that as he goes around talking to all these alternate Lokis, trying to arrest them or dealing with them, he'll wind up learning more about himself from the other versions. Like as he learns about their stories, how their lives wound up playing out, he'll wind up learning more about himself during each episode as he slowly becomes a more complete person on his sort of redemption arc. The other funny thing they talked about was the concept of a Loki love story running through season 1. Love stories, multiple stories running through season 1. In the same breath that they discussed the idea of female Loki, Lady Loki. If you're not familiar with the showrunner on Loki, he's mostly known for coming from Rick and Morty, but the thing that actually got him hired at Marvel was a script that he wrote for a movie, like a spec script, called The Worst Man in the World, and it was basically a time travel story. It wasn't a Marvel story, it was just a story about this time-traveling person that another woman had been sent to arrest. And those two characters wind up inexplicably falling in love with each other as they're chasing each other across time. So a little bit of that energy sort of flowed into the plot of Loki, because people think of Loki as the worst man in the world. So I don't necessarily think that that means that Loki is going to have a romance with the female version of himself, even though that would be the most Loki thing you could possibly do. Like, give me Loki, but make it like a Game of Thrones twincest story. Jaime and Cersei would be proud. And for those of you that weren't really satisfied with the explainer for time travel rules in the MCU after Avengers Endgame, they actually said that they had to refine the rules of time travel in the MCU. Like, they felt like Avengers Endgame didn't do a good enough job of explaining how time travel worked. So the Loki series will sort of refine the real rules of time travel, but that will be the new canonical explainer for time travel in the MCU. And if you didn't realize, the showrunner for Loki also wrote the movie Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness. He said that things happen during the Loki series to the MCU timeline that affect what happens during Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness. There are consequences that they create on Loki that he had to address during the script for Doctor Strange 2. He didn't completely reveal what those plot points were, obviously not to give away big spoilers, but clearly it has to do with Loki jumping around messing with the timeline as he's going after these alternate versions of Loki. And because Doctor Strange 2 is literally called Multiverse of Madness, there will be chaos in the multiverse in general. It's just that Loki adds the story dimension of time travel to this, whereas previously, most of us were just thinking about Doctor Strange 2 as being a story where they just travel to alternate universes, not necessarily them getting into the idea of alternate timelines. But if you really do think about it, I guess it's all the same idea. The multiverse, alternate timelines just collapsing in on themselves in chaos until theoretically you'd have something akin to a Battle World Secret War scenario. Now, they're not doing the story of Secret Wars for Doctor Strange 2, just to be clear. Even though I know everyone would love to see some sort of big multiverse Secret Wars storyline in a future Avengers movie. It's just the broad similarity in that the end result is the same. And he also said that Doctor Strange 2, as he was writing that, was supposed to start setting up the plot of Ant-Man 3 with what was going on with King the Conqueror. We probably won't get that first Doctor Strange 2 trailer till like October because the movie's not coming out till March, but we will get a trailer for it later this year. Everyone click here for that brand new Thor Love and Thunder first look video that Chris Hemsworth released, and click here for all my other Loki episode videos. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys tonight.